If you reheat your leftovers, there are 4 ordinary foods on this list you might want to think about a little differently. And today we are going to look at what the actual studies say about each one and, just as importantly, what they do not. Quick word before we start. I am not a doctor. I am a retired biochemist who reads these papers for the fun of it. So nothing here is medical advice, and anything that matters to you belongs in front of your own physician. Now let me be honest with you from the first minute, because that is the whole point of this channel. There is a great deal of frightening talk online about leftovers giving you cancer, and a lot of it runs well past what the research can actually support. Somebody reads one line of an abstract, and by the time it reaches a thumbnail, it has become a death sentence in your microwave. So we are going to do something more useful than frighten you. We are going to separate the parts that are solid food safety, the parts where the science is genuinely settled and you should act on it, from the parts that are, at best, an association across a large group, or a reaction seen in a laboratory dish, or a result in a rat given doses no human would eat. By the end, you will be able to tell the difference yourself, which is worth a great deal more than any single tip, because there will always be another scary video next week. Let me give you the frame first, because these papers keep coming back to 3 chemical stories, and once you know them, the whole subject gets simpler. This is the part people are tempted to skip, and it is the part that makes everything after it make sense, so stay with me. The first story is oxidation. When fats and proteins sit in the fridge for a day or two, they meet oxygen, and they become chemically unstable, a little frayed at the edges. Apply heat a second time, and some of those already frayed molecules break down further into compounds, lipid peroxides, and one called malondialdehyde among them, that can, in the laboratory, damage DNA. The second story is the browning reaction, what chemists call the Maillard reaction. It is the lovely thing that gives roasted meat its color and a crust its flavor. But push proteins and sugars through high heat again and again, and you can form compounds called advanced glycation end products, which are linked to chronic inflammation, and inflammation is one of the background conditions in which disease takes hold. The third story is the nitrate story, and it is the one to pay closest attention to. Certain foods are naturally high in nitrate. During storage, bacteria can turn that nitrate into nitrite, and nitrite, under heat and in the acid of your stomach, can go on to react with proteins to form nitrosamines, a family of compounds that the World Health Organization genuinely does treat as probable or confirmed causes of cancer. Oxidation, glycation, nitrosamines. Keep those 3 in your pocket, because every food we discuss today involves one or more of them, and you will start to hear them coming. Before we get into the 4, I would like to hear from you. Tell me in the comments how often you reheat leftovers and whether anyone ever actually taught you how to store them, because most of us were simply never told. And stay with me to the end, because the 4th food is the one nearly every health-minded person assumes is perfectly safe, sitting there in the fridge looking innocent, and the research on it is more interesting than you would think. And a small confession before we begin, so you know where I stand. I reheat leftovers myself, most weeks. I am not here to tell you to stop, because that would be both unrealistic and unnecessary. I am here to tell you which foods actually warrant a little care, and which are mostly internet alarm, so that the care you spend goes where it does some good. Food number 1, cooked rice. This is the staple that billions of people reheat every single day, in nearly every culture on Earth. And here the food safety part is genuinely solid. So of everything I say today, listen hardest to this one. The trouble is not really the reheating. It is what happens in the hours the rice spends cooling and sitting between the first cooking and the second. Raw rice naturally carries a bacterium called Bacillus cereus, and this is the key, it survives the boiling. If cooked rice is then left out on the counter or cooled slowly in a deep container, that bacterium wakes up and multiplies, and as it does, it produces a toxin. Here is the part that catches people. That toxin is heat stable. When you reheat the rice, the heat may well kill the bacteria themselves, but it does not destroy the toxin they have already made. The toxin sails straight through the microwave and into you. That toxin, called cereulide, has been shown in laboratory work to interfere with the mitochondria inside human cells, the little power plants, and there is a long, well-documented record of real food poisoning from exactly this, sometimes serious. So the sensible reading of the research is not exotic at all. Cool your rice quickly, spread it thin on a tray so it drops in temperature fast, Get it in the fridge within an hour or so, eat it within a day, and do not reheat it more than once. There is a second, softer point on rice, worth a mention. Repeatedly heating starchy food can form a compound called acrylamide, and the International Agency for Research on Cancer does list acrylamide as a probable human carcinogen, but I want to be fair about the strength of that, because it sounds more alarming than it is. Most of that classification rests on animal studies at high doses, and the everyday dietary picture for a person eating normal food is far less clear. So on rice, the bacterial food poisoning risk is the real, well-established one, the one worth changing a habit for. Treat that seriously, and the acrylamide takes care of itself. And let me tell you who this actually catches, because it is not who you would guess. It is not people with strange eating habits. It is ordinary, careful people. It is the batch cooker who makes a big pot of rice on Sunday and eats from it all week. It is the person living alone who cooks once and reheats for days because it is not worth the bother to cook fresh for one. It is the office lunch left on a desk all morning and warmed up at 1. None of them are doing anything careless in their own eyes. They simply were never told that rice, specifically, is a food that does not forgive being left to sit. So if you take one practical thing from this whole video, let it be this. Treat cooked rice like fresh fish rather than like a tin of beans. Cool it fast, chill it fast, eat it soon. That single reframing removes the one real risk on this list. Let me stay on rice a moment longer, because this is the one worth changing your habits over, and the mechanism is worth picturing. When cooked rice sits in that warm middle zone, not hot enough to be safe and not cold enough to be safe, the Bacillus cereus spores wake up, multiply, and pump out their toxin, and the longer the rice lingers there, the more toxin accumulates. That is why the advice is not simply about reheating, but about speed. Get the rice out of that danger zone quickly. Spread it thin on a wide tray or plate the moment it is cool enough to handle, so the heat escapes fast rather than sitting trapped in the middle of a deep bowl. Into the fridge within an hour, eaten within a day, and warmed through only once, thoroughly, never twice. Do that, and the toxin never gets the chance to build up in the first place, and this becomes a food you can enjoy without a second thought. Ignore it, leave the pot on the stove overnight, and pick at it for 3 days, and you are running a small, needless risk every time. Of everything I will say in this video, that is the piece I would actually change tonight. Food number 2, cooked chicken. This is the lean protein that doctors, dietitians, and careful families all build their meals around, and almost everyone reheats the leftovers. When animal muscle is reheated at high temperature, it can form compounds called heterocyclic amines. Now, these are not a fringe worry dreamed up for a video. They are among the most heavily studied dietary compounds in the entire cancer literature. Once they are in the body, the liver can convert them into reactive forms that bind directly to DNA, and in the laboratory that binding can produce the kind of mutations that, in critical genes, especially the tumor suppressor genes, whose whole job is to keep cell growth in check, are part of how cancer begins. A study published in the journal Carcinogenesis reported that people who frequently ate their poultry very well done carried a higher measured risk of colorectal cancer, and a separate analysis associated with the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health linked frequent consumption of reheated and processed chicken with a higher risk of pancreatic cancer, which is one of the more dangerous cancers, with genuinely poor survival. There is a second, quieter mechanism running alongside the amines too, the oxidation we talked about, because that second blast of high heat also drives the fats in the meat to break down further into byproducts like malondialdehyde. So far, so frightening. Here is my honest note, and it is the reason you keep coming back to this channel rather than the shouting ones. These are observational associations. They show a pattern across very large groups of people over many years. They do not prove that your Tuesday night chicken caused anything at all, and the size of the effect is far more modest than the headlines make it sound, and people who eat a great deal of very well done reheated meat often differ in a dozen other ways too. In how much they smoke, how much they move, what else sits on the plate beside the meat. So what does the research actually support you doing? Something gentle and cheap and easy. If you are going to reheat chicken, low and slow beats blasting it at full power, which is where the harshest chemistry happens, because the highest surface temperatures form the most of these compounds. And better still, a good deal of the time, you can simply eat cooked chicken cold, in a salad or a wrap or a sandwich, and skip the high heat second cooking altogether. A woman wrote into the channel, her husband, a devoted meal prepper who cooked a great batch of chicken every Sunday and microwaved it hard, right through to leathery, every lunchtime of the week. She was not asking me to frighten him, she said. She just wanted to know whether there was a gentler way, and there is. He now reheats it low and covered, or eats it cold in a salad, and by her account he cannot tell the difference, and neither can his stomach. No fear required, just a small change of habit. Food number 3, spinach and the other nitrate-rich leafy greens, and this is the one that catches out exactly the people who are trying hardest to eat well, so pay attention. Spinach, along with celery, beetroot, lettuce, and Swiss chard, is among the very richest natural sources of nitrate. And fresh, that nitrate is a genuinely good thing. It helps your blood vessels relax and supports healthy blood pressure. This is the same nitrate we will praise in other videos. The problem is not the spinach, it is the storage. Once cooked greens sit in the fridge, the bacteria naturally living on the surface of the leaves begin converting that nitrate into nitrite. This is the same basic chemistry that happens in cured meats, and it is part of the reason the World Health Organization classified processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen back in 2015. Now reheat greens that have already made that conversion, and under heat, those nitrites can react with amino acids in the food itself and later in your stomach to form nitrosamines. And nitrosamines are the one family in this whole video where I will not soften much because the evidence is more convincing. They cause cancer in animals at strikingly low doses, and in population studies, higher nitrosamine exposure is associated with cancers of the stomach, the esophagus, and the colon. This is not a worry invented for the thumbnail. The European Food Safety Authority has issued formal guidance on dietary nitrate and nitrite from vegetables. So the honest, research-backed advice on greens is simple, and this one I would actually follow. Eat your cooked spinach fresh at the meal you cooked it for. If you have leftovers, eat them cold within a few hours rather than saving them. And do not deliberately batch cook a big pot of greens with the plan of microwaving them across the week. There is an irony worth sitting with here. One of the healthiest foods on the plate can be turned, by nothing more than a storage and reheat habit, into a small source of the very compounds you were eating well to avoid. Food number 4, the one I promised would surprise you. Eggs. By almost every nutritional measure, an egg is a small marvel. All 9 essential amino acids, choline for the brain, selenium, the antioxidants lutein and zeaxanthin that look after your eyes. If I were designing a food from scratch, I would struggle to beat it. But reheating a cooked egg at high heat does something specific that very few people ever talk about. The yolk is where most of the fat sits. About 13% of the whole egg is fat, and most of it concentrated there. And when the egg is first cooked, that fat oxidizes just a little, which is normal and expected. Refrigerate it and then blast it a second time though, particularly in a microwave, and those already oxidized fats oxidize again, faster this time. And among the byproducts are compounds called oxysterols. Oxysterols are simply oxidized forms of cholesterol, and they have drawn a good deal of scientific attention over the past decade. Here is the word that matters, the one worth remembering. A comprehensive review in the journal Food and Chemical Toxicology concluded that oxysterols show what the authors called pro-inflammatory, cytotoxic, and genotoxic effects. Genotoxic means toxic to the genetic material, to your DNA, capable of producing the strand breaks and mutations that can, in principle, begin the chain toward cancer. There is also a smaller, related point. When egg proteins are blasted a second time, they form tougher crosslinks that are harder for your digestive system to break down, and the sulfur-containing amino acids in eggs, cysteine and methionine, can degrade with repeated heat into products that may add to oxidative stress in the lining of the gut, which is itself one of the proposed background conditions for colorectal trouble over the long run. Now, my calibration, because you have earned it by staying this far. Most of this evidence is from cells in a dish and from animals, not from studies showing that people who reheat their eggs go on to get more cancer. The compounds are real. The chemistry is real. The leap from a Petri dish to your Tuesday breakfast is exactly where honesty requires a pause, and where the shouting videos never pause at all. So I am not going to tell you reheated eggs will harm you, because the human evidence simply is not there yet. What I will tell you is that the low-cost, no-downside habit the research points toward is easy. Eggs are at their best eaten fresh, If you boil a batch, keep them in their shells and eat them cold, which most people prefer in any case. And if you must warm an egg dish, do it gently with low indirect heat, a warm oven or a water bath, rather than nuking scrambled eggs into gray rubber, which nobody enjoys in the first place. Now let me pause and say something about why any of this matters, because it is not really about 4 foods. When I first went through this literature, my honest first reaction was not fear, it was a kind of frustration. This information is not hidden. It sits in peer-reviewed journals and in official guidance from food safety authorities, and yet it almost never reaches the kitchen table in a form an ordinary person can use, clearly and without either panic or salesmanship. There are children eating reheated rice at school. There are older people living alone, reheating the same batch of chicken all week because it is convenient. None of them are doing anything wrong, they simply were never told. That gap between what the science knows and what the public hears is the only thing this channel is trying to close. There is a version of health advice online that runs entirely on fear, and I want no part of it because I have watched what it does. It leaves people frightened of their own refrigerators, distrustful of vegetables that are genuinely good for them, and worn out from lurching between one alarming thumbnail and the next, without ever changing a single real habit. Fear does not make anyone healthier, understanding does. So my aim here is never to hand you a longer list of things to dread. It is to give you the small number of ideas that let you think clearly for yourself, so that the next scary video about some food or other lands on a mind that can weigh it rather than simply absorb the alarm. And this is the deeper reason I do not simply hand you a list of scary foods and let you panic. Panic is not useful. It makes people throw out good food, or distrust the very vegetables they ought to be eating, or lurch from one frightening video to the next without ever changing anything real. What is useful is understanding the mechanism, because once you understand it, you can apply it to foods I have not even mentioned. Anything starchy and left out too long, think of the rice. Anything reheated hard and repeatedly, think of the oxidation. Anything nitrate-rich, stored, and warmed up, think of the greens. You do not need to memorize a list. You need the 3 ideas, and then you can reason for yourself in your own kitchen, which is worth far more than any single warning. So let me put it all together, because 4 foods with 3 chemical stories is easy to lose track of. Food number 1, rice. The strongest and most practical concern on the list, and notice that it is bacterial, not really about cancer at all. Cerealide from Bacillus cereus, a heat-stable toxin. Cool it fast, refrigerate it quickly, eat it within a day, never reheat it twice. Food number 2, chicken. Real, well-studied compounds, the heterocyclic amines, that interact with DNA in the lab, but where the human cancer link is an association across big populations, not a verdict on your dinner. Reheat gently or eat it cold. Food number 3, greens. The nitrate to nitrite to nitrosamine story, which is the most convincing cancer chemistry of the 4, so eat them fresh or cold and do not batch reheat them. Food number 4, eggs. Fascinating laboratory chemistry with the oxysterols, thinner human evidence, and best eaten fresh in any case. 3 mechanisms, oxidation, glycation, and nitrosamine formation, running under 4 of the most reheated foods in the world. Let me also give you the practical side plainly, because understanding the chemistry is only useful if it changes what you do at the counter. Cool hot food quickly, do not let it sit for hours in a warm pot, because the danger zone is where the trouble breeds. Get leftovers into the fridge within an hour or so, in shallow containers rather than one deep tub, so they chill through fast. Eat them within a day or 2, not a week. When you do reheat, favor a low oven or gentle heat over a microwave blasted on full, because the microwave creates uneven hotspots that drive the harshest reactions in patches. Reheat once, thoroughly, and if there is still food left after that, let it go. And the single most effective change of all, the one that sidesteps every mechanism at once, is to cook a little less, so you make fewer leftovers to worry about in the first place. None of that requires a thermometer or a chemistry degree. It just requires treating your food with a little of the respect it deserves. And notice what none of this asked of you. No supplement, no detox, no throwing out your leftovers in a panic. Just a handful of small, sensible habits. Cool food quickly, store it properly, reheat it gently and only once. Eat greens and eggs fresh when you can. Plan your portions so you make fewer leftovers in the first place, which is honestly the single most effective change of the lot. That is not fear-mongering. That is just food chemistry, treated with a bit of respect. If this is the kind of careful look you want more of, the honest version, rather than the frightening one, do subscribe, because that is the entire reason I do this, to hand you what the studies actually say, and then let you decide for yourself. There is no shop here, no supplement, no course to buy at the end, just a fellow who reads the papers and thinks you deserve to hear what they really say. And I meant the question earlier, so tell me in the comments, which of these 4 surprised you the most, and whether anyone ever taught you how to handle your leftovers. And take anything here that matters to you, and put it in front of your own doctor. That's what the evidence says. The rest is yours to decide. I'll see you next time.